What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we are going to be talking about some stash candidates that you can put on the back end of your bench as we head into week 7 of the fantasy football season. A couple of these guys I think have a lot of upside if there is going to be some potential trades here over the next couple of weeks as the NFL approaches that NFL trade deadline. So hopefully we can find some talent here, just like I said, to put onto the end of the bench and hope that they get some value insulation over the next couple of weeks. Now, with that being said, I don't want to waste too much time, so let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about these stash candidates. Now, for the official stash candidates, all of those players are going to be underneath like 40%, maybe even like 35% rostership percentage. But I do have some priority stashes in case you're in a little bit more of a shallow league, maybe a little bit less competitive. Just double check the waiver wire, make sure that these guys are not available. A lot of these players were talked about on our waiver wire episode this week and or a couple of weeks stash videos before. Those players are going to be Harold Fannin Jr., Kenneth Gainwell, Jackson Dart, Josh Downs, Alec Iamaner, Evan Ingram, Mason Taylor, and Tyler Algier. I think there's certainly lots of value here on this list, and Harold Fannin is probably going to be the starter this week with David Njoku trending towards out and possibly a trade candidate as well. So lots of good value here, like I said. But let's go to the first stash candidate that is underneath that 40% rostership percentage. And for me, it's going to be Luther Burden for the Chicago Bears. We talked about him on the waiver episode, but he's still at only 28% rostership. I think he needs to be picked up immediately in all fantasy football leagues because DJ Moore is trending towards out, which would mean big things for Luther Burden to step up and fill in that DJ Moore role here in a week against the New Orleans Saints, where he should have a pretty decent shot at having a big game and showing why he was drafted as highly as he was by this regime. So he's a very talented player. I loved everything that we saw at Missouri from Luther Burden. On the field, there were some off the field things that I think maybe made him slip just a tiny bit, but at the end of the day, super talented player, needs to be picked up, needs to be rostered because he has the ability to potentially break out here for this regime. And like I said, they drafted him, so they're looking for this opportunity for Burden to take advantage of. Now, my second stash candidate is going to be the highest rostered guy on this list. He's at 38%. It's Tyjae Spears for the Tennessee Titans. New play caller in town. Tony Pollard has not looked necessarily great, and I've heard his name floated around as a potential trade candidate here. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but I've heard his name associated with the Chiefs and maybe some other teams as well, like the Los Angeles Chargers. So Tyjae Spears, he's a guy that I'd be picking up. He looked like he was a little bit more involved, obviously starting the year on the injury reserve, and now he's back in the lineup. A little bit more involved last week, looked pretty decent, gets a matchup against New England. It's not the greatest of run defenses to go against, but I think he's an interesting piece just to hold on to because even if Tony Pollard doesn't get traded, Spears should have handcuff potential and an integrated role already in this offense. So I think he's a very interesting piece to stash. Now, my third stash of the week is going to be Ollie Gordon, running back for the Miami Dolphins, only rostered in about 23% of leagues right now. The clear handcuff to Devon Achane obviously has overtaken Jalen Wright as well. I think he's just an interesting piece in an offense that is very good in the run game for the most part. Obviously, there's been ups and downs with Miami. I think right now they're kind of still figuring it out. A lot of this is off of the field stuff, I think, for Miami right now with Tua and Mike McDaniel. But at the end of the day, Ollie Gordon, very talented player, obviously was very talented in college, a player that people were talking about at one point in time as a Heisman guy to potentially be at the running back position. I think Ollie Gordon is a great stash in case of injury for Devon Achane. Now, my fourth guy is going to be Jayden Higgins for the Houston Texans. Right now, I think this hasn't been the greatest start to the season for Jayden Higgins. It hasn't been the greatest start of the season for the Houston Texans. Their offense has looked a little bit sputtered at times, and I do think that that's because of the offensive line. But currently at only 24% rostership, I think Jayden Higgins is worth the shot. Coming off of the bye week, we typically see those guys, especially the rookies, off of the bye, kind of get a little bit more involved. So Jayden Higgins drafted highly by this team as well. I think he could be the number 2 here long-term alongside Nico Collins, and right now would be a good spot to do it. Maybe not against Seattle, but I think it's a good stash time for Jayden Higgins, and he should potentially be picked up and put on rosters if you need some help. How about another wide receiver, Jalen Coker? We've talked about him for a couple of weeks as well. He's a player coming off of the injured reserve, gets a matchup this week against the New York Jets, and only rostered in about 24% of leagues right now. He should be the slot wide receiver, a guy who could be some PPR kind of check down potential for a guy like Bryce Young. Obviously, Tedero McMillan is the number 1 wide receiver, but Jalen Coker is going to have value in this offense, and an offense that is going to have to keep passing the football if they want to stay involved in some of these games. We'll see what happens in the running back room, but for now, I'm going to be viewing this offense moving forward as T-Mac, the number 1 wide receiver, and Coker, the number 2 wide receiver, with Leggett spelled in here and there. So I think he's certainly worth picking up if you need some help. Now, tight end, you could go Isaiah Likely. He is on a bye week, so you're picking him up on a week where people aren't going to be looking to play him. And there's a chance with some of the injuries at the tight end position, the wide receiver position, things like that, he may have gotten dropped in your leagues. Look, I dropped him in one of my leagues. I had a major need at tight end. I had David Njoku and Isaiah Likely as the only two tight ends on the roster. Both of those guys aren't going to play this week, so I had to drop somebody. Likely was the drop. I think that could have happened in your leagues as well. I didn't want to drop Likely. I think there's a chance that Likely is a guy that's going to get even more involved. We saw the snaps increase last week as well. Did get a little bit more involved in that game, but also there have been some Mark Andrews trade rumors, and Likely showed flashes last year when given the workload here for the Baltimore Ravens. So I think with Lamar Jackson getting back into the lineup and potential trade rumors for Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely's a high upside stash at the tight end position, where we're always looking for upside at the tight end position. So my next guy is going to be Jordan Whittington here for the Los Angeles Rams. Look, he plays in a game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. That is going to be a London game, currently only rostered in 11% of leagues, but we know that Puka Nacua is injured. When Jordan Whittington filled in last year at times for Cooper Kupp and or Puka, he did have some pretty decent usage in this Sean McVay offense. I think the same thing can happen here this week with Devontae Adams as the number one and then Jordan Whittington probably as the number two. I think he's a fine pick up and play type of option at the wide receiver position if you need some help in a flex spot. But also I think if we were to see Puka Nacua miss a couple of weeks, which it has been rumored that he could miss, a couple games here before the bye week, I think Jordan Whittington is definitely worth holding on to because you can get a couple of plays out of him. Now, another tight end we can look at is going to be Oronde Gadsden here for the Los Angeles Chargers. Really liked him in Dynasty Leagues as a dart throw deep off the waiver wire and or late in your rookie drafts, but at 7% rostership, I think right now we've seen a little bit of a trend of him getting a little bit more involved. At the end of the day, I think last week's production was a little bit of a beneficiary of Quentin Johnston being out of the lineup, but it does look like Quentin Johnston is still questionable going into this week, which could lead to the same type of usage for Gadsden. So certainly a talented player, a receiving threat in this offense. I think there might be just a little too many mouths to feed with QJ, Keenan, Gadsden, and Ladd McConkey in this offense. But if one of them is missing time, Gadsden is certainly a fine stash if you're looking for some upside here at the tight end position. Second to last guy here, it's going to be Jack Bech for the Las Vegas Raiders. And you might say, what the hell has Jack Bech done to be worth picking up? This is a preliminary pickup, in my opinion. Tougher matchup this week against Kansas City. He's only rostered in 6% of leagues. Saw his snaps go up a little bit last week over Donta Thornton, who is the other rookie. But Jack Bech is the pickup because we've seen Jacoby Myers trade rumors, and Jacoby is playing the exact same role that Bech would be playing. So if Jacoby gets traded, Bech would fill in as that slot wide receiver, taking over the Jacoby Myers role. And I think he was drafted to be that for this regime. It hasn't worked out so far because Jacoby's been good, and obviously, it's a little bit of a weird fit when you have two of the guys playing the same position. But if Jacoby is moved, Bech would be an awesome pickup, and I think would have rest of season potential here in this offense. So Bech is certainly a preliminary pickup if you think there might be a Jacoby Myers trade. Now, my last and final player is going to be at the running back position. It's Jayden Blue, another rookie here. Look, I don't think that there's going to be immediate production from Jayden Blue at the moment, and at 24% rostership percentage, he is ranked last, or he is the last guy that we talk about for a reason. You don't have to run out and go grab him, but I do think he's an interesting pickup because he does profile as a pass catcher in this offense with Javonte Williams, and we just saw Miles Sanders go to IR. So I think Jayden Blue by default, moving up the depth chart, obviously activated the last week or two for this Cowboys team. It's a decent matchup this week against Washington, but I think overall he is a handcuff option for Javonte Williams, and if he gets a little bit more involved or a little bit more knowledge of the playbook, because that's kind of what I've heard is the issue with Blue, is not necessarily the talent. Obviously, he's dealt with some injuries in the offseason, but it's more the playbook and getting this offense under wraps as far as the mental goes. So I think that's kind of more what I've heard with Blue. I think he's a decently talented player. Like I said, a handcuff, somebody worth looking at if you wanted, a super deep league type of grab. At 24%, that means he's available in 3 out of 4 leagues. So there's a chance he's available on your waiver wire if you're looking for some extra play. All right, there you have it, folks. That is about 15 plus stash candidates when you count the priority guys and the 10 players that I gave you here today that you could look at adding to your roster as you head into the weekend. You may not have the flexibility this weekend to stash players with the injuries and the bye weeks. I get it. I just wanted to give you guys some names to keep an eye on just so you could potentially beat the waiver wire heading into week 8 of the fantasy football season, and hopefully maybe finding a breakout before it happens or before a trade happens that gives somebody some extra opportunities. Now, with that being said, if you did find something today informative, entertaining, and or actionable, do me the favor and hit that like button. It is the best free way to show this channel some support. Make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel. You don't want to miss any of the future content that we got coming out, and go join our free Discord. We do have a free Discord linked in the description, helping you guys 24/7, 365 with those fantasy football, redraft, dynasty, best ball, whatever it may be. We're helping you with everything fantasy football related in that Discord, and there's 600 plus people that want to hang out and talk with you. So like I said, it's free to join. There is no risk in doing that. But with all of that out of the way, I have nothing else for you guys today, so I will see you guys on our next episode. But until then, peace out.